Hello and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new, which you most likely are. If you are, I strongly urge you to subscribe because it will make my heart feel good. I didn't upload a video last week. Sorry about that. It was a week full of complete chaos. It was my birthday on Wednesday, but Monday through Friday was like non-stop. I was working on some writing stuff, working on some other things, and honestly, you guys will see that when I upload episode 3 of the writing series. You can catch up on it here. You'll be able to see what's going on. So that comes next week. But until then, we're back with a book video. I know that you guys love that. Also, the window is open. It is so hot in my room. The window will be remaining open, hence the microphone. So hopefully that's okay. Today, we will be doing my quarterly reading wrap up. I want to walk you guys through everything that I've read in the last, 3 months, since we're coming to the end of March. So January, February, March, what did I read? What was going on? How do I feel? What do I want to read next quarter? Very business. To track and log my books, I use the story graph. So far this year, the story graph is telling me that I have read 7 books, which I think is really good in 3 months. That's just a little bit over 2 books a month if you average it out, and I think that's pretty good. I will admit that I did start listening to audiobooks. If you don't see that as reading, get a grip. If you do see it as reading, thank you. I have also tagged what I'm listening to as a separate thing. Like, I've added a tag for it basically, so I know what I've listened to and what I've actually read on paper, if that makes sense. Okay, so going into it, the average time it takes for me to read a book is 9 days. The mood that I seem to have gravitated towards the most is reflective, and the second is emotional, which I feel makes sense. And I think I need to get a little bit happier with my reading. So, because I do find this year I've been reading a lot of heavy books, and that's just not ideal. Sometimes I need to mix it up. The majority of the books I've read this quarter have been below 300 pages, so that's also good. 100% fiction. I am a fiction girl. I want to read nonfiction, but I have a really hard time with it. I love a story, but I think that I have a few in my bookshelf, and one of the ones that I'm hoping to get to this year is Crying in H Mart. I've heard really good things. My average star rating is 3.86. And my highest rating so far this year has been 4.75. The first book I read and completed this year, I actually started this last year, so maybe it doesn't count as much, but the first book I finished this year was The Goldfinch. I rated that one 4 stars, and it was 771 pages. Insane. Personally, the fact that I read all that is crazy. I really liked this book. I initially read it because I love The Secret History. I've mentioned it in pretty much every single one of my reading videos. It is my favorite book of all time. So I was really excited to sink my teeth into another Donna Tartt. I've been so reluctant to get into her other books, but I just felt like it's been 2 years since I read The Secret History, that now was the time. I'm glad I did. I didn't watch the film yet, and I probably will. I want to do a video, and let me know if you guys like this idea. I want to do a video where I compare the book to the adaptation. This mainly stems from the fact that I watched Night Bitch the other day, and it sucked. And I started reading Night Bitch, and it sucked. And I couldn't finish it. So, with peace and love. The Goldfinch was a really good one. I felt really emotional throughout reading it. I felt really frustrated. I think I've said this in another video, but it just really took it out of me a little bit. It was so sad. Page after page, it was just oh my god, do something else, please. I really want the best for you. And he was not letting me want the best for me. The protagonist was not letting me want the best for me. I feel like I've talked about that before. I'm scared that I've already made this video and I just don't remember. The second book I read this year was one that I received for Christmas, and that was The Ministry of Time by Callie-Ann Bradley. That book was phenomenal. I gave it 4.5 stars. It's been a really strong reading year this year. The books that I've been reading this year have been pretty peak. The Ministry of Time was a kind of sci-fi dystopian novel with an underlying romance, and I felt so connected to all of the characters. I was thinking about the book when I wasn't reading it, and that's such a big thing for me, is if I'm thinking about something actively without having it in my hands and not actively engaging with it, you just know it's good. I felt giggly and in full support of the romance, and then I felt devastated when things weren't going the way they should, and then at the end I feel like it was all wrapped up quite nicely. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think it was a debut novel, and I think as far as a debut goes, it was incredible. I really liked it. I could be so wrong, it might not be a debut. The next one was not a strong one. I was supposed to go to an event centered around this book and its adaptation, but I simply could not, because I don't feel like the story did what it needed to do for me, and I didn't really feel like engaging with it further. That book is Queer by William S. Burroughs. I had a lot of hope for this. I still haven't seen the movie. I haven't heard great things about it, but again, if I do that adaptation series or video, I will watch it then. I just thought the story was kind of stale. I wasn't rooting for anyone. The protagonist was pretty two-dimensional, and all of the characters were equally two-dimensional. I really don't have all that much to say. I gave this book 2.5 stars, and I think that might have been generous, because it's a short book. This book was only 160 pages, and it took me well over a week to read it, and a book that short should never take that much time. I also feel like I read a lot faster when I'm reading on my Kobo, and I was on my Kobo and I was trudging through that. Like, my feet were in the mud. So yeah, maybe good for some people, maybe someone will like it, but it wasn't for me. It really wasn't. The fourth book I read was Hard Copy. Hard Copy by Fien Veldman. If I pronounce that wrong, I'm sorry. Hard Copy is a Dutch novel translated into English. But I don't speak Dutch, so I read the translated version. I think reading translated stories is always interesting, because the way that international authors or authors from other languages tell stories is so interesting, and the metaphors are so different, and everything just flows differently, and I find it so fun. I gave this book 3.75 stars. I did feel like it was maybe a bit too long. I feel we could have gotten to the point a little quicker, but I did really root for the protagonist. We don't know her name. She grows dependent on a piece of machinery, and it's just a very quirky story about mental health and navigating kind of change and your 20s, and it's all a little bit weird, and I think that's a great thing. The next book I read was Annie Bot by Sierra Greer. I watched the film Companion shortly before buying this book, and the reason I bought this book was because I loved Companion so much. And Companion is a story about a robot woman that mainly men will purchase to do as they please with. That was a very PG way of putting it. And in Companion, the robots rebel. And that's kind of what I thought Annie Bot would be, because it centers around the same kind of protagonist. It's a robot who was purchased by a man, and she looks human, and she starts to feel human emotions, and what she does with that is what it is. I got the sense from the blurb on the back that it was going to be perhaps a bit more thriller-esque. Instead, it was just a bit dystopian. I still really enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. I liked it. I went through it pretty quickly. It was only 231 pages. I just thought that the ending was rather disappointing. There was a point where I thought it would get really exciting, and it just kind of never did. It felt like we were on the edge of something really good, and we could just never get to the other side of it, if that makes sense. Still really liked it. Still really recommend it. Just don't go into it thinking that it's going to be Companion like I did. I think that's where my issue stemmed. The next one I have on here, the second to last one I have on here, is one that I actually listened to. This is my first audiobook, my only audiobook that I've completed this quarter. I listened to The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue. Brilliant. That audiobook was so good. I have never been somebody who's been able to listen to audiobooks and actually take in the story. It's always kind of gone one ear in, one ear out the other. I think I've mentioned that before. I honestly loved The Rachel Incident. Listening to it was incredible. I also love an Irish accent. Loved every second of that. The narrator was incredible. She was so engaging, and there was something so captivating about the way that she was delivering the story. The story itself was just crazy. It's definitely heavy in some aspects, but it's so good. I think it's such a good one for your early to mid 20s. Kind of, the story starts at the end, and then we kind of go through Rachel's whole university career, and then we get back to where we started, which is the present. I think one thing that I really took away from it is that just because you mess up, or just because you do something you're not totally proud of in your early 20s, doesn't mean it's going to ruin your life. Take yourself a bit less seriously. Obviously, the stakes are really high, feel really high as you're listening to it, and all gets wrapped up so beautifully, and the roller coaster of emotions. Like, I listened to this book at work while I was working, and the fact that I was able to do my work properly and actively engage with the story was brilliant. I think that's revolutionary. The next and last one for this video is Breast and Eggs by Maiko Kawakami. I got this one for Christmas as well from my sister, and it took me a really long time to get through this book. It's a very dense book. It was a 430-page book, which felt pretty big, but the subject matter was also quite heavy. Not in like a super trigger warning-y way, but just in the sense that this woman is dealing with grief and self-identity and just trying to figure out how to be a good person in this world, how to basically, the story revolves around a woman. She isn't able to engage sexually with men. She doesn't like it. She doesn't want it. She decides that she wants a child, and she goes on this rabbit hole of wanting to have this child, researching how to have this child, while struggling with kind of the hard rules that they had in Tokyo or in Japan about having a child by yourself, basically. And so you kind of watch as this woman tries to educate herself and tries to make everyone happy while maintaining her friendships and avoiding judgment from people around her, and the toll that that takes on her. And then you're also kind of seeing how she engages with her family and how she engages with her career, and it's all very interesting. It's all very, very human, and I think that's what made it so difficult, was watching someone struggle with a decision that they want to make for themselves that feels like it could change the way that everyone perceives her, if that makes sense. Maybe that's a bit convoluted. That's what I took away from it. Maybe that's not what was intended, but the humanity in the story was crazy. And Maiko Kawakami is just such a talented author. I read her other novel, Heaven, or one of her other novels, Heaven. I don't know if she has more than that. And Heaven was tragic. And in the same way, this book was tragic, but at least it had a good ending. Like, it was a happy ending, and I think that I was nervous about reading this one, and I was very slow to read this one because I was afraid of a dark ending. I rated that one 4.75 stars. So yeah, and the Rachel incident was 4 stars. I don't know if I mentioned that. That is all for this video. If you enjoyed it, leave it a thumbs up. Let me know what you've read so far this year. I'm really interested to learn. Let me know if you have any reading goals going forward. I think we might do a video about that soon. I'm really glad you're here. Like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next one. Bye.